Exposed. How I found incredible hidden strength after my DIL abandoned her sons for 5 years. Mark Thompson woke up that morning with nerves jangling. He felt as though the weight of 1,000 bricks had settled on his chest. It had been 5 years since his daughter-in-law, Sarah, walked out on their family, leaving him and his wife, Linda, to raise their grandsons, Jake and Ben. They had built a life of love and laughter in their small Midwestern town, fortified by strong values, community bonds, and evenings spent fishing by the river. But everything was about to change. Jake burst into the kitchen, chirping as usual. "Grandpa, can we go fishing today?" His excitement was contagious. Just as Mark prepared a smile in response, the doorbell rang, shattering the peaceful morning. It was Sarah, standing there with a brittle smile and eyes that betrayed her intentions. The past seemed to swirl around her like storm clouds, dark and alive as she stepped into their lives once more. Back when she had first left, Mark remembered the sound of silence that echoed through the house after she walked out that door. The boys, once filled with joy, wore expressions of confusion and heartbreak. He had vowed never to let that happen again. Yet here Sarah was, the past knocking at the door, demanding another chance. His heart raced. Would this be an opportunity for healing or a hammer to shatter everything? "Mark," Sarah started, her voice tremulous. "I want to be part of their lives again." Tension crackled in the air. Linda, who had always pledged to protect their family, stood silently, her jaw clenched. Mark's insides twisted. Could she really change? Did a mother who vanished have a right to come back? He felt anger like a hot flame in his belly. But beneath it, a flicker of hope burned. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. Mark's thoughts whirled like a tornado. He glanced at the boys. Their innocent eyes were wide with longing, hope flickering like tiny candles. Jake and Ben, they couldn't understand the weight of this moment. A struggle played out in Mark's heart, but he held his chin high. Linda's eyes spoke volumes. They were resolute. A good parent doesn't just vanish. The scene in the living room brimmed with tension. Mark felt an urgency like never before. "Sarah, after all the hurt you've caused, how can you expect to just waltz back in?" Her eyes darkened, hurt flashing across her face. "I've changed," she insisted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I want to try again," and then, as if the world had stopped, she delivered a ruthless blow, revealing she planned to take the boys with her. Mark's heart plummeted into an abyss. He stood frozen, the room stretching into an unbearable silence as gravity settled onto his shoulders. The lives he had built with Linda teetering on a knife's edge, he felt the taste of fear warm his throat. He looked into Jake and Ben's eyes, full of hope and uncertainty, and he understood something vital in that moment. Sometimes, fighting for what's right means standing firm against what feels instinctively wrong. What would he choose? Loyalty to the past or a chance at rebuilding a family? The answer hung in the air, heavy and brittle. What would he do next? Mark's heart raced, pounding in his chest like a war drum. Sarah's words, echoing in the living room, felt like a cold wind sweeping through the bones of his family. He didn't want to become the villain in this story, but could he really allow her back in? As he searched for a response, he noticed Jake's small hands gripping the worn arm of the couch. Ben stood beside him, eyes wide and confused, shifting from one parent to the other. The room had become a battlefield. "Sarah, it's not just about you. It's about them," Mark said, his voice ringing with gravity. Determination became a rope binding his resolve. "You think you can come back and erase the last 5 years? They've been through hell without you." The bitterness was thick, and Linda stepped forward. "Mark's right. You can't expect everything to be fine just because you feel guilty now." The words fell from her lips like stones, heavy and solid. For a moment, a flicker of vulnerability crossed Sarah's face, quickly masked by defiance. Guilty? I'm not here to feel guilty. I'm here to fix my mistakes. She shot back, anger flaring in her eyes. But Mark could see the cracks in her facade, the uncertainty beneath her bravado. He took a deep breath, summoning the strength that had been accumulating in him for years. Fixing mistakes takes time and work. Sarah, do you have any idea how much the boys need stability? They deserve to know that their family won't crumble again. An awkward silence settled, filled only by the shuffling of Jake's feet. The child's innocence felt like a light illuminating a dark room. Mark crouched down to his level. Hey, bud, how are you feeling? Jake hesitated, glancing between his grandfather and his mother, struggling to find the right words. I miss Mommy, but I love living here too. A shuddering breath escaped Mark. This sweet boy, was holding a fragile balance of emotions. Ben piped in, me too. Fishing and story time. We never do that anymore. The boys' voices melded into a chorus of yearning, cutting through the tension that wrapped around them. Mark looked back at Sarah, her expression shifting. The lines of determination softened, replaced with something akin to regret. Do you even understand what they've been through, or why we've fought so hard for them? He asked, searching her eyes. Slowly, she nodded, her expression unsteady. I want to support them. I thought you might let me back in, she admitted, her voice faltering. It was as if the storm inside her was beginning to settle, but the damage was done. They were not a family healed. They were a family irreparably fractured. Linda broke the silence, her resolve clear. If you want to be in their lives, you'll have to prove it. You'll need to earn their trust back. This ISNTA game, Sarah, they are not pawns for you to play with. Their eyes locked in a silent battle of wills. Mark felt a sense of hope whispering in, but it mingled with the residual fear of getting hurt again. What if Sarah let them down a second time? The stakes had never been higher. Fine then, Sarah said, her voice steadying. I'll do whatever it takes. There was a weight to her words, but it still felt like a tenuous promise on the edge of a precipice. Mark nodded, feeling torn, but accepting her sincerity. Then let us figure this out together. But know this, my priority will always be the boys. They come first. The air felt charged, the birth of a new beginning aching to occur. Yet there was still a daunting path ahead. How would they navigate the turbulent waters of reconciliation? As the silence deepened, Mark's heart sank at the thought of the unknown. Could a broken family really be mended? The question lingered like a flickering candle, its flame dancing in the shadows of uncertainty, and time was running out. What choice would he make if Sarah faltered again? Mark's mind raced as he fought to contemplate the next steps. He could feel the weight of Sarah's promise like a boulder sitting on his chest. Alone in the living room, the air thickened around them, filled with a tension that could snap like a brittle branch. The boys needed more than promises. They needed stability, security, and love, things that had been lost and needed rebuilding. Okay, he said finally, his voice steady but low. Let's take this one step at a time. We'll start by seeing how the boys feel. They deserve a say in this. Jake shifted uneasily, looking at his brother. Do we have to say nice things? He was still so little, but already aware of the complexities of adulthood. His innocence tugged at Mark's heart. No, Ben blurted, his brows furrowing. I just don't want to do things the way we used to. I want things to be different. It was a child's plea laced with wisdom beyond his years. Mark nodded, feeling the sting of unvoiced pain in his son's words. Sarah blinked, hiding her uncertainty behind a thin veil of bravery. I can listen to them. I can help. I am here now, and I want that change too. But even as she spoke, Mark sensed a distance, as if there was still a barrier between her and the boys, an invisible wall built by years of absence. Linda stood beside Mark, arms crossed tightly, a fortress guarding her family. What will you do for them? Words are just echoes without actions to back them up. Her voice was calm but firm, cutting through the thick air with the precision of a knife. Mark watched Sarah process the gravity of Linda's words. I'll come to family dinners. I'll go to their games, she suggested. But still, there was a hesitance in her voice, as if she were trying to convince herself more than the rest of them. Talk is one thing, Linda interjected, but they need consistency. You need to show them you are here to stay, no matter how hard it gets. Agreed, Mark added, feeling relieved that Linda was keeping the pressure on. The boys couldn't be the ones left to pick up the pieces of Sarah's decisions. Mark turned his attention back to the kids. How about we all sit down together, just the four of us, and share how we're feeling about this? It's important that you both feel safe to say anything. Jake and Ben exchanged glances, unsure but willing. Slowly, they nodded. Okay, Jake finally whispered, I just want to fish again. Ben tugged on Mark's shirt, his small voice barely a whisper. And, can we eat ice cream afterward? Yes, buddy, ice cream too. Mark squeezed out a smile, feeling a flicker of light pierce through the tension. Sarah took a deep breath, her gaze softening as she watched the boys. I'll bring my famous chocolate chip cookies, she said, sounding both hopeful and sad, as if she carried a weight still grasping her heart. Mark locked eyes with her, his resolve steadying. We'll take it slow, one step at a time. The words were both a promise and a warning. Could they rebuild this fractured family? Would it take more than just cookies and conversations? The uncertainty hung in the air like a thick FOGS. They began to settle into a tentative plan. Mark felt a spark of determination rising within him. Hope flickered unsteadily in the distance, yet it was also cloaked in the fear of what might come next. He might be willing to give Sarah a chance, but at what cost? When Jake asked if they could catch big fish that summer, a burst of laughter echoed, a reminder of innocence amidst the chaos. But deep down, Mark wondered, was he ready to expose his heart to Sarah again? Would opening the door to her reveal a healing path, or just scratch the surface of old wounds? The days drifted by after that tense meeting, each one layered with cautious optimism. Mark found himself replaying the scene over and over, thinking about Sarah's gentle tone, the boys' shy smiles, and Linda's steady eye contact. They had all agreed to something new, but could hope survive under the weight of past mistakes. On Saturday morning, the sun poured brightly through the kitchen window. Mark brewed coffee, the rich scent curling through the air like a warm hug. He glanced at the boys, sprawled on the living room floor, surrounded by Legos and half-drawn sketches. They seemed blissfully unaware of the storm brewing just outside their little bubble. Hey, team, he called out, ruffling Jake's hair as he walked by. Ready to head to Grandma's for some fishing? The boys looked up, their eyes brightening. Can we make fort out of her living room chairs while we wait? Ben asked, excitement bubbling in his voice. Absolutely, Mark grinned. Fort making is essential fishing preparation. As they made their way outside, Mark felt the warmth of the sun on his back. It was a simple day, but it felt monumental. The boys chattered excitedly about their fishing strategies, seemingly unburdened by the complexities lurking beneath the surface. Mark couldn't help but join in on the planning, his heart swelling with pride at their resilience. After a quick drive, they arrived at Grandma's house. The familiar scent of her garden lavender and something sweet wrapped around them. Mark could hear the sound of construction in the living room. As they entered, he was surprised to find Sarah squatting beside the coffee table, frosting cookies for the boys. Hi, guys. I made the chocolate chip cookies just like I promised, she said, beaming. Caught off guard, Mark noticed the way the boys lit up at her presence. Jake rushed over, hands sticky with Lego residue, while Ben cautiously approached her. Can we help? Ben asked, a glimmer of hope lacing his voice. Of course. Here, take this. She handed Ben a frosted cookie. You can be my official taste tester. Mark watched as Sarah knelt beside the boys, laughing and joking while they decorated cookies with sprinkles. In that moment, he saw something different, a glimpse of the mother they had been missing. The walls he'd built around his heart trembled under the weight of nostalgia and longing. Caught any good fish yet? Sarah asked, ruffling Jake's hair, who was too excited to articulate a response. She looked up at Mark, vulnerability shining in her eyes. I want to make this right, Mark. I really do. He swallowed hard, weighing her words. Would it be easier to keep his heart guarded? Or could this be the opening he'd been waiting for? As the boys giggled, frosting smeared across their cheeks, A familiar feeling settled in Mark's chest. Hope. Could he really believe in the promise of change? Just then, Jake piped up, "Do you think we'll catch the biggest fish ever?" "Let's hope so." Sarah laughed, glancing at Mark for a moment, her expression earnest. He saw a flicker of determination there, but also a hint of doubt that made his heart ache. Mark's phone buzzed in his pocket. He glanced at it. An email notification caught his eye. His breath hitched as he read the subject line, "Urgent Family Matters." Heart pounding, he looked back at Sarah and the boys. After everything, was he ready to face whatever might come next? Would this unexpected email derail the fragile peace they were building, or could it possibly lead to their salvation? With a mixture of dread and curiosity, Mark realized that the answers could change everything. Mark's heart raced as he sat down heavily on the edge of the sturdy dining chair, the wooden legs creaking under the sudden pressure. The email burned in his pocket, a lifeline thrown in turbulent waters. He swallowed hard, forcing himself to meet Sarah's gaze. Her smile faltered just a touch as she sensed the shift in his demeanor. "Everything okay?" she asked tentatively, a sprinkle of concern tracing her brow. "Yeah, it's just nothing," he replied, forcing a smile. But the wheels in his mind were already turning. Families didn't often receive emails about urgent matters without good reason. Did it have something to do with their past? Or was it an echo of a different pain that could rise again, one he had fought so hard to bury deep? He watched as the boys continued their joyful chaos, frosting flying across the room like confetti. Each squeal and burst of laughter from Ben and Jake raised the stakes in Mark's mind. They trusted that things could be different this time. Could he risk upending this fragile equilibrium they had been building? "Let me check this quickly," he muttered, moving away from the joyous scene, his heart heavy and the air thick with anticipation. Mark retreated to the quiet of the kitchen, seeking refuge among the familiar aromas of baked goods and freshly brewed coffee. Opening the email, he stared at the screen, dread pooling in his stomach. It was a message from Linda, his sister, a plea for help with their aging father. "Things are getting tough here," it read. "We're going to need you to come back, Mark." The words hit him like cold water. His father's health had been declining for months, but the reality of it unleashed a tidal wave of guilt and responsibility within him. He inhaled sharply, a rush of conflicting emotions swirling. Here he was, building this new life for his boys, embracing the mother they longed for. But suddenly, old ties were demanding attention, dragging him back into a past he had tried so hard to leave behind. "Dad needs you," he whispered to himself, feeling the weight of family responsibility press on his shoulders. Mark leaned against the counter, taking a moment to breathe. A moment where he could collect his thoughts. His heart ached for his father and for the uncertainty this situation could bring upon his boys. Just as he gathered enough strength to face Sarah again, he turned and noticed the glimmer of hope in her eyes. She had followed him, arms crossed, concern lining her face. "What is going on?" she pressed gently. "I just got some news." He hesitated, weighing the depth of what he would share. It felt monumental, a pebble tossed into a tranquil pond. "My dad isn't doing too well. Linda thinks I should go back." To help, her expression shifted, a mixture of compassion and understanding. "That's a lot to take in. You need to do what's right for you and your family, Mark." "But I don't want to abandon things here," he replied, clenching his fists. "Not again." Her voice softened. "You're not abandoning us. You're being there for your family. Sometimes you have to face the past to embrace your present." Tears threatened to spill from the corner of his eyes. Could she really mean that? Mark felt an ember of hope flicker back to life. Maybe this was not just a burden. Maybe it could be a chance for healing for all of them. Yes, the boys called out from the other room, eager for another adventure. Mark felt torn. Choices loomed ahead, paths diverging in ways he hadn't anticipated. Was he ready to confront his past for the sake of his father? Could he juggle the demands of family and the peace he had just begun to create? But as he looked at Sarah, a light of understanding forming between them, Mark realized that some journeys required bravery. And at that moment, standing in the doorway between joy and sorrow, he knew he'd have to decide soon. The email was an invitation to change, to face what he'd been avoiding for years. What lay ahead was uncertain, but the road was calling, and he needed to choose. Could he gather the strength to face both his family and the heartaches of yesterday? With his heart pounding, Mark took a step forward, ready to make a decision that could reshape their destinies forever. Mark stood in the kitchen, feeling the chill of uncertainty wrap around him like a heavy cloak. He could hear the joyful laughter of his boys echoing through the house, their innocence a stark contrast to the turmoil brewing within him. Every giggle felt like a reminder of what he had built here, a precious family that was finally taking shape. Yet, the email lingered in his mind, a reminder that life was not always as simple as it appeared. Sarah stepped closer, her voice gentle yet firm. "Mark, you don't have to do this alone. I can help whatever you decide." The warmth in her words eased some of the tension knotted in his chest. He squeezed his eyes shut, the flashes of old memories surfacing like unwanted guests. Family dinners that devolved into arguments, his father's disapproving glares, the weight of expectations that had crushed him for years. Was he truly ready to drag those shadows back into the light? What if I go back and things are worse? He whispered, a tremor of fear in his voice. He had spent so long escaping the tangled webs of his childhood. Now, they beckoned him back, demanding attention. "Then we'll handle it together," Sarah replied, moving closer. Her presence felt like a beacon against the darkness. "You're not alone anymore." Mark opened his eyes, and for a moment, he could see clarity through the fog of doubt. Yes, he had a past that haunted him, but he also had a future, a bright one filled with laughter, hope, and love. He could face his father without sacrificing his boys or the life they created together. It didn't have to be all or nothing. If sensing his change in energy, Ben and Jake ran into the kitchen, faces smeared with icing, eyes wide with excitement. "Dad, you got to see this," Ben exclaimed, pulling on Mark's shirt, dragging him towards the living room as though there was no room for hesitation. Mark was momentarily lost in their joy, watching their smiles light up the room. The chaos of frosting and laughter overshadowed the worries circling his mind. He knelt to their level, caught in the moment, the love he felt for them surging through him. "What's going on, buddies?" he asked, a genuine smile replacing his earlier frown. "We made a cake. It looks a little messy, but it's going to taste amazing." Jake beamed. The innocence in their enthusiasm snapped Mark out of his spiraling thoughts. The cake was a symbol of their little family, messy yet filled with love. He could be there for his father while also nurturing the new life he was building. "Let us taste this masterpiece," he shouted, laughter bubbling forth as they all piled into the living room. Just as they set the messy cake on the table, Mark felt a sense of peace wash over him. He could go back and help his dad. He could face whatever came next without losing everything he had gained. As they prepared to dig into the cake, Sarah observed from the doorway, a slight smile on her face. She knew he had taken a step toward a decision, a step shrouded in uncertainty yet ripe with possibility. But as Mark lifted the forkful of cake to his mouth, a thought struck him like a thunderbolt. What if his father had truly changed? What if, beneath the years of resentment, there lay a chance for reconciliation that he had never considered? His heart raced again, caught between an ache for the past and the budding hope for the future. The email was not just a call to duty. It was a chance to heal old wounds, to bridge gaps that had festered for too long. With cake crumbs on his lips, Mark's gaze flickered back to Sarah, then to the boys. He wondered if he could find strength in the messy moments of family life he adored. Maybe the path ahead was not just about facing the past, but about redefining what family truly meant. As the laughter echoed around him, he clenched his jaw, determination settling in. It was time to put one foot in front of the other and to start a new journey. What awaited him on the other side? Would he find the strength to confront his father, or would the wounds of their shared history prove too deep to heal? Mark could still taste the sweetness of the cake, but it began to sour as the weight of his decision pressed down on him. The laughter of his boys filled the air, yet in the back of his mind, He could hear a different voice, the voice of his father that had haunted him for years. This voice was not just echoing. It was demanding attention. It wanted him to doubt, to retreat, to run away from the confrontation he knew was looming. "Daddy, cake time," Jake squealed, his face lighting up like it was his birthday. It was infectious, pulling a reluctant smile from Mark. But the moment he thought of the upcoming trip back home, the smile faltered. As they gathered around the table, Mark stole a glance at Sarah. She was smiling now, but he could see a hint of concern in her eyes. She wanted him to face his past, and he wanted that too, but the remembrance of confrontations with his father sent chills through him. "Are you okay?" Sarah asked softly, breaking through his reverie. "I'm fine," Mark replied, forcing a smile. But his heart wasn't ready to let it go. It was like he was gearing up for a battle. If his father hadn't changed, if nothing had changed, what would that mean for the life he had created here? His thoughts were interrupted as Ben grabbed his attention with a forkful of cake. "Dad, try it. It's the best." The way his son insisted sparked a sense of duty within him. It wasn't just about his own fears. He had to remember that these moments mattered. He wanted to give his boys a father they could be proud of, someone who wasn't defined by the past. As he took a bite, the sweetness melted in his mouth. The smile returned, brighter and more genuine. The innocence of their creation, despite the frosting catastrophe, reminded him of the value of imperfection. Life was supposed to be messy, just like that cake. "Delicious," he exclaimed, and the boys erupted in cheers, thrilled by the small triumph over baked goods. While they dug into the cake, Mark noticed Sarah's gaze shift to the window, her smile slipping slightly. "It's getting late. I sent it." Reality began creeping back in after that moment of joy. They had school tomorrow, and he had a decision to make. He couldn't put off anymore. Tonight would be about family, but tomorrow would be different. "Can you give us a hand with the dishes?" he asked, standing up to clear the table. "I might need a little extra help." "Of course," Sarah replied, her eyes glinting with understanding. As they worked together in the kitchen, Sarah leaned closer. "You know you can do this, right? Whatever happens, I'm here." Mark nodded, though doubt lingered. Her confidence in him was a lifeline. It pushed him to consider the possibilities ahead. What if he really has changed? The question slipped out before he could rein it in. "The only way to know is to go," she replied, placing a comforting hand on his back as they washed the dishes. He felt her warmth seep into his skin, mixing with the lingering adrenaline coursing through him. Maybe the fear of the unknown was necessary. Maybe it was time he learned to face it head-on, not just for himself, but for his boys, for Sarah, and even for his father. Just then, the phone buzzed on the counter. It was another email notification. Heart pounding, he reached for it, and as he read the subject line, the world around him went quiet. "Urgent, family matters." Was this a plea from his father? The message could hold everything: regret, an invitation, or perhaps a last-minute explosion of hostility. Whatever it was, it would dictate the tone of their impending reunion. His hand trembled as he stared at the screen, uncertainty threatening to swallow him whole. What was waiting for him behind that click? Would he face the truth ready, or would he retreat once again from the shadows of his past? Mark's heart raced as he considered what he might find behind that email. He felt Sarah's gentle hand on his back, encouraging. His boys chattered away, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing inside him. Taking a breath, he clicked the message open. The screen filled with his father's name, a name that felt heavy like a weight on his chest. But as he read, his father's words seemed to leap off the screen. "Mark, we need to talk," it began. "There is something important I need to tell you. Please don't ignore me this time." The message felt like both a plea and a threat. "Dad's never been one to apologize," Mark murmured to himself, the irony of the statement sending a shiver down his spine. "Dad, what is up?" Ben piped up, sensing the change in Mark's demeanor. "Just an email," Mark replied, forcing a smile that felt like a mask. He wanted to keep the world of his boys safe from the storm he felt brewing within. Sarah leaned in closer to read over his shoulder. "We'll figure this out together. Remember that?" He nodded, grateful for her steadiness. But looking at the glowing screen, he felt a tightening in his chest. His father had a way of stirring old fears. What if he just wants to hurt me all over again? Mark whispered, his voice barely audible. You can handle it. You're stronger than you think, Sarah insisted, her eyes meeting his with fire. It was a spark of hope amidst his chaotic thoughts, igniting a flame that replaced some of his dread. Right, he finally said, but he had to convince himself just as much as he was speaking to her. The boys finished the last bits of cake, a blur of laughter and crumbs. Mark wanted to bottle that joy, carry it with him back home, back in the confrontation waiting for him. Let us finish up and get you two to bed, okay? Mark said, looking at Jake and Ben with a warm smile. They nodded, eager in their youthful energy, and jumped into action like little soldiers. Between washing the dishes, he stole peeks at the email. The words felt heavier, bearing the weight of a history he thought he had buried. As he scrubbed a stubborn spot on the plate, he found himself wishing for just a glimpse of understanding between him and his father. Dad, can you tell us a story tonight? Jake asked, his bright eyes shining almost as brightly as the kitchen lights overhead. Mark paused. Sure. What story do you want? About a superhero, Ben shouted, bouncing on his toes. Mark laughed, the sound brightening his mood just a bit. Okay, how about the one where the superhero faces his greatest fear? The boys cheered. It was an easy story to tell, one of bravery and adventure, but as he wove the tale, he found reflection creeping in. The superhero had to confront a beast. It wasn't merely a creature, it was a representation of everything that held him back. As the story reached its climax, Mark realized he was weaving in his own fears. No matter how brave the superhero pretended to be, there would always be shadows lurking. When he finished, Jake's eyes were wide, and Ben snuggled closer. Are you the superhero, Dad? Mark's heart melted, the innocence and love in their voices washing over him. Maybe, he replied softly. Maybe we all are. He tucked them in, their faces turning peaceful under the soft glow of night lights. As he closed their door, he felt a swell of responsibility. His father may have filled him with doubts, but he would not let that darkness overshadow what he had built with his own boys. Sitting back in the kitchen, the anxiety started bubbling again. He took a deep breath, looking back at the email. There would be no more avoiding. It was time to face the beast, whatever it may be. He typed a quick response. I'll meet you tomorrow. With a trembling finger, he hit send. Tomorrow would be a new battle, and this time he could no longer hide. As he stared at the screen, waiting for a reply, a thought hit him. Could this be the moment where he could prove to himself and to his boys that change was possible? His phone buzzed again. More words from his father? This felt like the point of no return. Would he find the answers or just deeper wounds? Mark stared at his phone, the glow of the screen illuminating a face filled with uncertainty. It was the kind of moment one feels before a plunge into icy water, part dread, part exhilaration. The text notification was from his father, and he could feel the weight of expectation pressing on him. What could be so significant that he had to reach out after all these years? He rubbed his temples, trying to push away the headache that seemed to accompany these thoughts. Memories flooded in angry words, cold silences, a rift that had only widened over time. The scars his father left were deep, and the fear of reopening them paralyzed him. Yet here he was, on the precipice of change. Tomorrow meant facing the man who had shaped so much of who he had become, for better or worse. Unconsciously, his fingers curled tightly around the phone. What if he has changed? He murmured. The flicker of hope battled with years of disappointment. Dad? Sarah's voice pierced the silence, drawing him back to the warmth of their home. She appeared in the doorway, concern etched into her features. You okay? Mark forced a smile, but he could feel the tension snaking its way through his body. Yeah, just thinking about your dad. He nodded, unable to find the words. That single nod spoke volumes of the weight he carried. Do you want to talk about it? Sarah asked gently, as if sensing his hesitation. In that moment, he felt the soft pull of her love, a steady anchor against the tumult of his emotions. Did he want to lay this all out? The truth was heavy, the burdens worded in a way that made them feel more dangerous. He opened his mouth to respond, but nothing came out. Instead, he focused on her eyes, searching for reassurance. "It's just, what if it changes everything?" he finally said, his voice cracking. "It won't change the boys," she replied matter-of-factly, crossing the room to rest her hands on his shoulders. "They love you. You're their hero." It was the simplest of truths, but one that sent warmth through his chest. Mark chuckled, brushing off the weight of her compliment. "I'm no superhero," he said, the mask he wore slipping back over his features. "Maybe you are without realizing it," she interjected, raising a well-defined brow. "You're doing what your father couldn't. You're showing up." The sincerity in her tone ignited something deep inside him, something akin to a quiet rebellion against fear. He took a deep breath, focusing on that flame of determination. "Yeah, maybe I'll show him what a real father looks like." With that, he pulled Sarah close, inhaling the comforting scent of her hair, grounding him as they clung to each other in the moment. But the darkness still lingered, a reminder of the battle still to come. Later that night, Mark lay in bed, the silence surrounding him thick with anticipation. Would he have the strength to confront the past, or would he allow it to swallow him whole? Tomorrow's visit to his father felt like a stepping stone, a path towards healing. As sleep began to steal over him, he pictured his boys' faces bright, gleaming with innocence and hope. They needed a father who was present, who could hold his head high and face the monsters of yesterday. Just before sleep claimed him, a single thought pierced through the fog. If he didn't confront his father now, would he lose his chance forever to not only heal his own wounds, but also redefine what fatherhood meant for his sons? Mark's mind buzzed with possibilities, adrenaline racing through his veins. And just like that, a new text notification jolted him awake. Heart pounding, he opened it. What awaited behind that message? Could this be the start of something unexpected? A new beginning? He leaned closer, pulse quickening, and read the words that could change everything. The sun dipped low on the horizon, casting a soft golden light across Mark's living room, hugging each corner with a warm embrace. He sat at the kitchen table, an anxious pile of thoughts swirling in his mind, heart still pounding from the whirlwind emotions that had enveloped him since that fateful email from his father. Today was the day. The day he would face the past and embark on what felt like an impossible journey toward healing, a journey he had been avoiding for far too long. He could still hear the laughter of Jake and Ben as they built a fort in the living room, their innocent joy a reminder of what he stood to protect. He found comfort in that sound, floating like a buoy above tumultuous waters. "All right, boys, time to wrap it up," he called, a bravery igniting in his chest. They had grown so much in the past months, adapting and thriving in the storm they had weathered together. Mark's heart swelled with pride. Maybe he was doing something right after all. "Can we finish our fort first?" Jake pleaded, his big round eyes filled with hope. Ben chimed in, "Yeah, Dad, just a little while longer." He looked at them, their faces bright and full of life. "Okay, 10 more minutes, and then we need to go," he said, feeling the weight of the moment settle over him. "We have some place to be." Once the boys had secured their fort, Mark gathered them up, his heart racing with the uncertainty of what lay ahead. He had made a promise, to himself and to Sarah, to face the past. Sarah, her steadfast support, fueled his courage like a shield. She had assured him he wasn't facing this alone anymore, and though her words echoed in his mind, a nerve-wracking anticipation twisted within him. Climbing into the car, a silence fell over them, filled only by the soft hum of the engine. Mark glanced back at the boys. Their smiles were wide and bright, showing no trace of the heaviness that clouded him. It felt surreal that such innocence could exist in the same universe. He was about to step into a universe carved by regret and pain. But now, for their sake, he was ready to, as they drove, Mark's mind raced. He had replayed the old arguments, the power struggles, and the moments that had twisted him in knots of anger and disappointment with his father. Had anything changed in that household? Would the man he was walking into be someone capable of redemption? He clenched the steering wheel a little tighter, a wave of anxiety crashing over him. Then he felt Ben's tiny hand on his shoulder. "Dad?" he asked softly, breaking through the whirlwind in Mark's mind. "Are you going to be okay?" Mark turned, meeting the sincerity in Ben's eyes. "Yeah, buddy, I'm going to be okay," he promised, despite the knots lingering in his stomach. "I'm going to talk to Grandpa." The boys nodded, their faith softening the edges of his trepidation. They were so filled with love and understanding. Generations beyond still held the possibility of change. He was determined to walk through this door not just for himself, but for them. Finally, they arrived. Taking a deep breath that seemed to stretch forever, he stepped out and glanced at Sarah. Her hand squeezed his shoulder with an affirming warmth that ignited his resolve. Together, they approached the door, and Mark heard the sound of rustling within, a clang of metal, and then silence as they knocked. His heart thumped in his chest as the door creaked open, revealing a frail figure standing on the other side. "Dad," Mark breathed, barely able to contain the flood of emotions that rushed through him. Mark's father looked older, the time wearing deeply into his features. Mark struggled to read the expression on his father's face. Was it guilt, hope, or something else entirely? "Let us talk," Mark said. The words hung in the air, filled with weight and expectation. He stepped inside, taking in the scene around him. Old photographs lined on the walls, dust gathering in the quiet corners, shadows of memories that had long remained untold. As they sat around the table, tension thickened the air. With Jake and Ben playing in another room, the deafening silence seemed to press down on them. It was here that Mark's resolve stared him in the face, daring him to break the stillness between them. His heart raced as he took that first step. "Dad, I need you to know your choices affected me deeply. They changed everything," he began, his voice soft but steady. The moment felt pivotal, raw. His father shifted in his chair, vulnerability washing over his features as Mark continued. "I can't be like you. I want to be like you. I'm raising my boys to do better, to know love, and I need you to understand that." His father's expression shifted, something like remorse flickering behind his eyes. "I made mistakes, Mark. I realize that now," he offered. "I'm sorry. I can't change the past, but I want to be different now. I want to be part of their lives." Mark's heart ached, but he held fast. Words are just words until they're action. "You'll have to show us prove it." In that moment, he saw the flicker of determination in his father's eyes, a glimmer of hope. What if this time was different? The air felt charged. A possibility lingered in the silence. As the conversation flowed, both observed the shadows of their past while reaching for the light of the future. Here, in this small moment, they began to peel back layers of hurt, exchanging voices instead of silence. Hours later, after stories and apologies, Mark saw something he hadn't expected, a bond beginning to mend. The shadows didn't disappear, but there was a flicker of light peeking through the cracks, a chance for a new chapter. When they returned to the car, the boys squealed with delight, bounding toward him with laughter that swirled in the air like music. Mark felt a shift in him, a lightness born from fear being replaced by strength. "Did you catch any big fish, Dad?" Jake inquired, eyes wide with curiosity. Mark smiled, pride bubbling within. "You could say that, buddy. It was a big one." As they drove home under the dusky sky, he realized change wouldn't happen overnight, but today had been a step, a promise, a beginning. He had faced dark waters and emerged not unscathed, but willing to paddle through. Turning to Sarah, he felt a swell of gratitude for the support that anchored him during this storm. She glanced at him, eyes shining with understanding. "Ready for the next adventure?" he asked with a grin. "Always," she replied, a fierce determination reflected in her gaze. Together, they embraced the uncertain road ahead, hand in hand, hearts boldly open to the possibilities that awaited them. Mark looked back at the boys as they chattered about fishing, their joys pure and unwavering. This was his family, a beautiful mess, cherished and imperfect but filled with love, and he was ready to lead them into the future, brave together no matter the tide. This was the new beginning. He'd been searching for the essence of family, forever best experienced not just in the calm, but amidst the storms of life. Now more than ever, he felt alive with hope and strength. Change was possible, and he would fight for each moment with every ounce of his courage. In that moment, Mark knew, together, they'd rewrite their story. This was not just the end, this was their beginning. Don't let the journey stop here. You need to subscribe now to dive into exclusive stories that inspire and uplift. Hit that like button and feed the algorithm to bring more heartfelt tales to life. I want to hear your reactions. Share your feelings about this ending in the comments below. And remember, don't wait not even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Your support makes all the difference.